One rumor has followed Jacqueline Bisset about for more than half a century. In 1968, it all began on Steve McQueen's Bullitt set. Their chemistry was so strong that their admirers thought they were secretly romantically involved. However, Bisset has had enough at the age of 81. She is finally speaking up about their actual relationship. People weren't expecting the truth that she's exposing. And Steve McQueen isn't the only one involved. A woman's entire career might be tarnished by just one false statement. She is finally speaking out now, after decades of being left out. A baby girl was born amid the din of faraway bombs on a September morning in 1944, deep in the heart of England's worst hour. Winifred Jacqueline Fraser Bisset was born to Arlette, who was not present for her husband's birth. Even when fighter jets continued to boom overhead, he was far away in Iceland practicing medicine. The area around Jacqueline's birthplace, Weybridge, has been designated as a secure area. Contrarily, V-1 flying bombs had crashed nearby in July, just 2 months prior. Despite plans for a tranquil delivery, she entered this world surrounded by smoke and sirens. Arlette had narrowly avoided death on one occasion. After the German invasion of France in 1940, she rode her bike out of Paris and through the devastated countryside in search of a British troop ship. As a lawyer, she had been incisive and self-assured. But she had already become a refugee by the time she reached England, and the pain she had endured had never fully healed. It wasn't about culture or elegance. She just wanted Jacqueline to speak French. It centered on staying alive. Young Jacqueline had to step in and translate during family arguments because Arlette would slip into French when she got angry, sometimes yelling and other times sobbing. She was the mediator even at the tender age of 7. The turning point arrived at that particular second. Her mother was afflicted with multiple sclerosis about 1951, when Jacqueline was 7 years old. The tragedy devastated the entire family, not just Arlette. Despite being hired to provide care, her father voluntarily left. He just departed. No farewell, no assistance, zero funds. He continued to deny providing genuine help for the following 17 years. Arlette had no one to help her. Jacqueline saw her mother's physical and emotional collapse as she struggled to keep their lives together. They were short on funds. In order to pay for her ballet classes, Jacqueline had to start working when she was 8 years old. The $2 monthly cost was too much for them to handle. For the sake of dancing, she even cleaned the studio's floors and mirrors. Modeling had become her breadwinner by the time she was 14 years old. There was no glitz to it. It was a state of despair. On occasion, her earnings exceeded her mother's disability payment by $15 or $10. Neighbors recalled how, with an unassuming strength that few adults possessed, she pushed her wheelchair-bound mother while holding grocery bags. The worst started when she turned 15. As her mother's health declined, Jacqueline took it upon herself to be her primary caregiver. She became her mother's right-hand woman, assisting with everything from eating to bathing to dressing to maintaining her alignment. When Jacqueline began making movies, she was already putting the majority of her earnings into her health. We had already spent over $200,000 by the late 1990s. She said she already had a child when media inquired as to her infertility story, an enormous one. Her mom. She had to hire private nurses if she wanted to go on long shoots. Until Arlette's death in 1999, this went on for another 40 years. It was 55 years old for Jacqueline. In spite of everything, Jacqueline persisted. She was a model and went to the Les France Delries for financial support. She returned to a French school at the age of 17 to hone her accent. The Knack and How to Get It, both in 1965, were her debut cinematic appearances. With no lines, she was paid only $50. However, there was something striking about her screen presence. Even before her 1966 casting in Koldiak, Roman Polanski's film, she was put through her paces. She was advised by Polanski to perform a naked scene. She turned down the offer. Retakes were his punishment after he threatened to terminate her. She didn't budge an inch. Her 1967 film credits include Casino Royale, which also featured Ursula Andress and Peter Sears. The budget was $12 million, but Jacqueline only received $15,000. Sellers received $1 million. She was treated more like a prop than a worker and subjected to harassment and cornering in the dressing rooms while filming. There was a cost to her determination, but she refused to give in. Tragic parts were less common for her, as she got stereotyped as the exotic European woman. In the same year, she had a near-career-ending experience. Her encounter with a famous producer ended with roles offering $100,000 each, but they were contingent upon her agreeing to sleep with him. She turned down the offer. His record of her is filled with blacklisting. 2 film roles, including one starring Paul Newman, were hers to lose. There was no work for 8 months. Behind the scenes, Audrey Hepburn supported her by introducing her to female-friendly filmmakers. Insiders think it was a Fox executive ousted in the 1980s for similar behavior. Jacqueline never named the individual. Something life-altering occurred to Jacqueline Bisset when she was 24 years old. She co-starred with Steve McQueen in the film Bullitt. On October 17, 1968, the film was released. And that wasn't all it accomplished. It earned $42.3 million, putting it in the top 5 of that year's box office results. What really made it memorable, though, wasn't the money or the now famous 10-minute and 53-second automobile chase. The way Bette refused to back down in the face of McQueen's star power was the defining moment. While McQueen ripped around town in a Mustang GT 390, she was behind the wheel of a Porsche 356C. She was apprehensive when he told her, "You are a very good driver for a girl." She wouldn't laugh about it until later. Sure, why not? But she managed to pull it off. Bullitt was later listed to the U.S. National Film Registry in 2007. Her legacy would live on in cinematic annals. Bullets weren't the only major event of 1968, though. Beatty had a phenomenal year that year. Frank Sinatra and her being in The Detective was completely unplanned. Then Mia Farrow had problems with Rosemary's Kid, and she dropped out. Enter Bisset. When it came out, the film was daring. Not in a good way, but it did touch on subjects that mainstream cinema shied away from, such as the gay lifestyle. It did, however, spark discussion. She co-starred alongside Michael Saracen in another film, The Sweet Ride. For her performance, she was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Newcomer. All told, she had a banner year with Bullitt, The Detective, and The Sweet Ride. That is how she rose from the ranks of 20th Century Fox's contract players to become an unstoppable celebrity. On screen, she was more than just stunning, she was commanding. But there were pitfalls to stardom as well. The first time was a film she was in 1969. A comedy about coming of age was the original intent. As a result of mistaking her for a prostitute, 3 young men attempt to lose their virginity. It was meant to be humorous, but that was beside the point. The sexual scenes were the center of attention. Still others thought it was too emotional, but critics unanimously agreed that it was the top sex film of all time. Bisset demonstrated her versatility by donning a blonde wig. However, her attractiveness was the only topic of conversation. That's when the stigma of being a sex symbol began to cling to her, and she despised it. She aspired to be recognized for her acting chops rather than her beauty alone. However, the label remained a constant presence in her life well into the 1970s. The attention was unsettling even as she was making strides forward. She remarked that McQueen was lovely and helpful on set of Bullitt, but that they never really became friends. Rushing from place to place, he spoke incessantly about automobiles. She had to say some shocking things back then on The Detective. Words like penis and sailor were used in the crime scene conversation. Things that weren't mentioned in 1968 films, yet she maintained a professional air about it. Neither was collaborating with Sinatra. She felt compelled to equal the intensity of his legend status. However, she completed it. She repeatedly shown that she could compete with A-list Hollywood actors. In 1977, The Deep was released. Acting wasn't the only thing at stake this time. It centered on staying alive. It took 153 days to film. Some 95 dives were done. The compressed air used was more than 1 million cubic feet. The part alone necessitated that Bisset study scuba diving. When a diver pulled too hard on a pole in one scene, her stunt duplicate dislocated her shoulder. Bisset herself nearly drowned on their one and only take. A lot of folks, meanwhile, couldn't get past the opener. Underwater, she's wearing a white t-shirt. The news was all over that see-through shirt. Producer Peter Guber went so far as to say, "That t-shirt made me a rich man." However, B's accomplishments surpassed mere fame. She was nominated for another Golden Globe. Despite putting her life on the line to get the picture, she persisted in climbing the corporate ladder. However, sometimes domestic issues arose as a result of prosperity. She made her stage debut in Francois Truffaut's 1973 play Day for Night. 3 British Academy Picture Awards and an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Picture went to it. Bisset portrayed a recovering actress. Although it was honest and raw, there was a point where she was naked. The thought that her mother would be proud of her caused her immense horror. Their relationship was severely damaged by the embarrassment. Even yet, the part was one that Bisset was fond of. She had faith in the movie. As far as filmmaking and emotional realism were concerned, she bought into its claims. Truffaut added an extra layer of intimacy by playing the role of director in the film. After that, in 1974, Murder on the Orient Express dropped. Lauren Beale, Ingrid Bergman, and Sean Connery were all there. Bisset portrayed Andre, the Count, in a pivotal scene. A line was improvised by her. Those were things that director Sidney Lumet felt strongly about. Since it was an Agatha Christie production, he insisted that the actors adhere strictly to the script. They nearly left the set because their disagreement got that heated. Finally, they were able to come to an agreement. Even though she generally adhered to the script, she did retain some of her emotive touches. She was the standout performer among the legendary cast. According to Christie, this was the sole alteration with which she was completely satisfied. She played a less subtle Jackie Kennedy, Liz Cassidy, in 1978's The Greek Tycoon. As Onassis, Anthony Quinn starred. Prior to Bet Jackie, everything was running smoothly. The encounter became the most embarrassing thing that had ever happened to her. Jackie deemed the project to be lacking in taste after a single glance. She then walked away after telling Bisset that directly to her. No greeting, no handshake, just icy contempt. Bisset remarked afterwards that it was both terrifying and exciting. There were intimate scenes on a yacht and fights over food in the film. Of course, Jackie despised it. That was a moment Bet would never forget. She co-starred with Charles Bronson in the 1976 picture St. Ives. The rumors followed. What appeared to be romantic dinners were captured by the paparazzi. His wife's name was Jill Ireland. However, the news reports continued anyway. Onlookers witnessed them intertwined. The crew members who were at Biset's trailer whispered about their lengthy visits. They were always together, according to the hotel workers. She maintained her innocence while acknowledging a more profound truth. The attention flattered me amid my loneliness. That statement spoke more than any affirmation in the movie. They possessed genuine chemistry as characters. There was a fuzziness around intimate scenes. Many questioned if the on-screen action was real or staged. Rumors swirled around them for a long time. On a tranquil night in 1984, Jacqueline Bisset made an unprecedented television appearance. She portrayed Nina von Halder, a German countess who fell head over heels for a Jewish writer at the darkest hour of Europe's history, World War II. Joining the resistance to aid Jewish refugees from the Nazis was a huge gamble for her. The Last Jews in Berlin, written by Leonard Gross, was the inspiration for the film Forbidden. Bet researched the Holocaust extensively in order to be ready. Although it has not been proven whether she visited Auschwitz, her performance possessed the type of gravity that can only be achieved with genuine comprehension. It was emotionally taxing. The film featured authentic documentary footage of Berlin during the war, and audiences lauded her for her unfiltered performance. It altered public perception of her acting career in the 80s. She began filming under Mexico's volcano on August 8, 1983, in the same year. Horrifying heat, humidity, and mayhem ensued. John Huston's film, which took place on the Day of the Dead, put an enormous amount of pressure on her. The intensity was amplified by Albert Finney's unwavering performance as a crumbling British consul. Legends like Elio Fernandez and Katie Girardo were there, and they were hot, emotionally spent, and surrounded by locals. The tension was palpable as rumors circulated about scorpions on set. The part of Yvonne Furman garnered Bisset a Golden Globe nomination. It was justly earned. After that, in 1989, something completely new emerged. Bisset portrayed wealthy widow Claire Lipkin, who was involved in ludicrous and provocative antics, in scenes set in the Beverly Hills class conflict. There was no holding back in the film when it came to the nudity or the satire. It was the subsequent events, nevertheless, that truly shocked the public. Tragically, co-star Rebecca Schaeffer was killed by a stalker just 1 month after the film's premiere. She had been spotted by the murderer in the movie. The controversy sparked discussions about appropriate film content and the limits of acceptable violence. The critics were impressed by Bay's bravery in the part. Her reputation was unimportant to her. Something grander was what she sought to convey. Years down the road, in 2001, she became a part of a tiny independent enterprise named the Sleepy Time Gal. Emotion and family strife were palpable in this subdued film. She was joined by Nick Stahl, Martha Plimpton, and Amy Madigan, but the film saw persistent setbacks due to budget cuts, scheduling conflicts, and delays. Due to the difficulty of making independent films in that era, this one took a toll, but was nevertheless bound to it. She was both gentle and painful, which were necessary for her part. Her performance left an impression on moviegoers even if the film bombed at the box office. She supposedly had an audition for Basic Instinct in the late 80s. $1 million, supposedly, for the part that would make Sharon Stone famous. Bisset, however, declined. It deviated too much from her regular behavior. Sexual content, physical aggression, and controversy. This was not her destiny. Stone was elevated to legendary status after the film grossed over $350 million. However, Bisset appeared unconcerned about it. In her life, she had always prioritized rich characters over wealth. You could tell she was herself just by looking at her choice. There was no less turbulence in her private life. She dated Alexander Godunov from 1981 till 1988. It was he, the Russian ballet star who, in 1979, abandoned his wife and emigrated from the Soviet Union. In 1981, at a New York City party, they crossed paths, and sparks flew. They fell deeply in love 6 months later. However, Godunov parched himself. The man Bisset had feelings for faded away. He destroyed her heart in 1988 when he dumped her for another lady. She cried treachery. He passed away at the age of 45 in 1995. Disease of the liver. A man's awful end befits someone who had once fought for liberty. Michael Sarrazin was the other long-term partner she had in the 1970s. They became friends while shooting 1968's The Sweet Ride and lived in a Malibu beach house for the next 7 years. Tragically, their stardom overshadowed their fan love. Bisset shot to fame with her 1970 breakthrough performance in Airport. Too much for Sarrazin to manage. She came clean in 1981 about prioritizing her work over love. His character left the beach life behind when they shot their last film together. It had the air of art mimicking tragedy. Finally, there were those Frank Sinatra rumors. She replaced Mia Farrow in 1968's The Detective alongside him after the actress pulled out. Reportedly, Sinatra wanted to spite his ex-wife Mia so badly that he instructed Bice to chop her hair. He hoped she could fix something that was already damaged by taking after Mia. By 2020, she had disproved the affair, claiming Sinatra was already married and that she had no interest in continuing the relationship. Insiders, however, held a different view. During filming, rumors circulated that Sinatra had affairs with Bisset and Lee Ramick, two of his co-stars. He was undergoing a very publicized divorce at the time. There was a lack of distinction between private and public life. Victor Dry, a Moroccan businessman, turned Bisset's life upside down from 1973 to 1980. They crossed paths in 1974 while flying. He uprooted his life in Paris, took a job flipping houses, and eventually settled in Beverly Hills. In addition to being his romantic partner, she also became his business partner. Everything was destroyed by his gaming. She was crushed by his debts. She was forced to liquidate her valuables in order to settle his debt. In terms of money, it was a disaster. Years later, though, Dry managed to get back on his feet and become a multi-billionaire nightclub magnate. He opened Excess in Sin City and was inducted into the Hall of Fame for nightclubs. Jacqueline Bisset accepted her Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress for Dancing on the Edge on January 12, 2014. The next events, however, took over the evening. She remained still for what seemed like an endless amount of time. It was unclear if the crowd should wait or clap again. When she was ready, she spoke. However, she delivered an unusual combination of profanity, awkward silences, and unfocused suggestions in lieu of the customary gratitude speech. Tragically, the censors intervened after she had already spoken on live TV, saying, "For those who have given me sad, like my mother always said, go to hell and don't come back." In a matter of minutes, memes went viral. Someone even said she was inebriated. People around them simply gazed in shock. She clarified afterwards that she was completely overwhelmed. She was ravenous, having gone 47 years without a nomination. She was dead serious when she claimed she hadn't had supper. Millions of people were watching, but no explanation could cover why she began to talk about forgiveness or look for co-star Chiwetel Ejiofor in the audience. Among the most memorable award ceremony speeches of the decade, that 2-minute moment became just that. She had gone viral before, and that wasn't the last time. A persistent rumor has doggedly pursued her for more than half a century. Bullitt, which was released in 1968, featured her alongside Steve McQueen. There was a magnetic force between them. In swarmed the paparazzi. Claims of secret love floated around. Bet finally had enough in 2020, when she was 76 years old. She finally snapped and shouted, "We never slept together." She was visibly frustrated. However, the tales persisted. The sights they exchanged while driving through San Francisco in a yellow convertible only served to fuel the speculation. It's been described as irritating and tiring by her. The mention of it in every interview is like a slap in the face. Fans and biographers will not let go of the subject, regardless of her denials. The lifespan of that single rumor exceeds that of many professions. She starred alongside Ben Kingsley and Theo James in the 2018 political thriller Backstabbing for Beginners, which was shot in Morocco. Despite her advanced age, there was nothing graceful or subdued about that set. A love scene that Bisset found objectionable led her to square off with Danish filmmaker Perfley. She declined, claiming it was unnecessary. Work came to a standstill. During the violent sequences, Ben Kingsley's performance was so powerful that Bisset compared it to an eagle flailing its wings. Behind the scenes, the stress was much higher than what was shown on TV. Off camera, It seemed more like a battleground of egos, but on screen, she played an NGO activist from France in post-war Iraq. Following that, the year 2021 arrived. At the age of 77, she portrayed the dreadful ballet director Madame Brunel in the film Birds of Paradise. She should have gone with a pair. She insisted on performing the majority of the scenes solo, which was understandable. She tore a muscle so severely during dress rehearsal that production had to halt for a week. Massive budget overruns were generated by that one injury. The film has previously been postponed by 5 months due to problems. There was only a week to go, and it was already falling apart. The same was true for her co-stars. Both Christine Froth and Diana Silvers overexerted themselves. The day prior to recording a crucial scene, Silvers fractured a rib. Before returning to Budapest, she was involved in an accident that caused her to lose part of her third toe. Bisset persisted in dancing despite the mayhem. Finally, in 2022, something was right. Neither Lauren nor Rose were box office smashes. It won large despite being quiet and personal. At Augie, Best Narrative Picture. At Studio City, Best Screenplay and Actress. And at Palm Springs, Best Feature. All of a sudden, she was back in the spotlight at the age of 78. Additionally, she received Lifetime Achievement Awards in Sedona, Sarasota, and Santa Fe. However, there was still a shadow even at this peak. Her role as an acclaimed actress who guides a budding filmmaker in a film brought to mind the things she chose not to do. Despite her lifelong ambition, she never took the helm. According to her, that part made her realize opportunities she had hidden for a long time. The applause was painful, too, for once. Then 2025 rolled around, and suddenly everything was in the news. She told Page Six that, at 80 years old, she felt quite cold toward the #NeverMeToo movement. That ladies need to learn to say no, or F word, was her advice. Because she was always strong and protected, she insisted she was never the target of harassment. Subtext and women's apparel were also held responsible by her. Unprepared for it, Hollywood was. Rapid retaliation ensued. There were some who backed her, saying she was completely forthright. She was deemed out of touch by others, but she refrained from returning it. Nothing ever gets done by her. Even before then, she had grown resentful of the way Hollywood portrayed her. She had a starring role in the 1977 film The Deep. Despite its iconic status, she despised the wet t-shirt poster. She did her best to prevent its release. Underwater filming put her life in jeopardy, and she almost drowned. Peter Guber boasted, "That t-shirt made me a rich man." In 1981, she made $1.65 million on Icon, a Hollywood disaster that year. However, she continues to describe The Deep One as a major letdown. That it failed miserably is not the reason. Rather, it transformed her into someone she despised. In 2022, she warned that it posed a significant risk. Having it described as a wet t-shirt thing was also disappointing. François Truffaut's 1973 film Day for Night was her favorite. She mentions that one even now. Most people overlook a different aspect of her existence. She became Angelina Jolie's godmother in 1975. Marceline Bertrand, Jolie's mother, was someone she knew very little about when asked, but she still agreed. They were pals for more than 3 decades. At the Palm Springs Festival on January 3, 2025, VZ presented Jolie with the Desert Palm Achievement Award. She spoke highly of her as an outstanding parent. Through it all, they've persevered. Despite having Viz deleted from films like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Jolie never abandoned her. Vet remained a close friend of Jolie's even after her divorce from Brad Pitt. She will always be proud of her goddaughter. Even though she will be 81 years old in 2025, Jacqueline Bisset will still not budge. No amount of Botox has ever touched her. She was told in her 40s that roles wouldn't exist in her 70s, but she figured, "I'll still be good then." And she was right. She claims to appear really authentic. Enjoy your youth and flaunt off your legs, she advises young women. In her view, one must embrace their own identity as they age rather than fixate on fleeting ideals. One thing is obvious, regardless of your opinion on her. Jacqueline Bisset has been a Hollywood icon for over 60 years, and she has never changed.